Welcome everybody. The recording should be working. So we're ready to do the demo for the last sprint of the Evernym development team who works on the last sprint of 2018 for the Evernym team that contributes to Indy and to the sovereign ecosystem. This sprint's almost all Indy stuff, and we're excited to show you a few things. So this last sprint, we were able to cover a whole range of stuff on the Indy Node side. We did have an outage, hit a corner case on view change with the sovereign network that the protocol doesn't really define very well. And as a result, we had to spend a chunk of time working on that. So there are a few stories that had to drop over. But we've got a couple hot fixes we pushed out to try and address that, or we're in the process of pushing out. We'll talk about that more as we near the end of the demo. But the goal here was to improve stability, finish the previous round of stability fixes, and then we had some new features that we need to unblock with architecture work. So that's what we were working on this sprint. On the SDK side, we are completing a release of the SDK 1.7. That includes the first release of libVCX, the credential exchange library that people can play with. We're calling it experimental because we're getting feedback. That release is almost done, but it got delayed a bit as we were improving, updating the crypto library that we use, the Apache Milagro library, and also as we accepted a pull request for revocation that took a while to finish up. So we got those things done. Caused a couple of things to drop into the next sprint, but those were the main goals, was to unblock these other teams that are paying on revocation and VCX. So we're glad to make progress on that. So with those two items, with that brief introduction, let's talk about the SDK. Matt recently joined the team. He's based in the US and is a member of the team, and he was able to work on updating the credential form, the credential values format, so IS 1101. Matt, do you want to share your screen?
Sure.
Okay, looks good.
All right, you can see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right, yeah, so IS 1101 has to do with changing some of the attributes that are being sent in when you create a credential. I don't know how easy it's to see, but this format right here that I'm highlighting, that's the old format. It's kind of a JSON key array, sort of. That was the old format. And we are deprecating that. I'll explain that a little bit more in a second, and we're replacing it with a true key value pair format, highlighted right there on my screen. That would be the new format. Because we don't want to break existing uses of VCX, we decided to support both formats. The old format is deprecated. At some point we will remove it. But for the short term, we should support both. What I did is I thought I would just kind of demo two unit tests. One unit test shows the old format, this one here. I'll run that one first. We are going to run the unit test. Uh-oh, why is it building? It wasn't building a minute ago.
Demos are always like that. You breathe on your laptop and it decides it has to rebuild.
Sorry about that, guys.
You're just proving to everybody that this is real life. It's not all canned.
I
have a quick question while it's building.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So you said it's deprecated. Do we have a plan or a way to let people know that? So when they use it, they can see this deprecated? And do we have a plan for actually removing it?
I think that's something we need to decide exactly how we're going to do that. We realized we couldn't just change the format and break things. We also realized we can't continue to support both formats indefinitely because one really is an incorrect way. I don't know if we really have a formal way of being able to say this is deprecated. Part of the challenge there is like in Rust, we can't push deprecated warnings during the compile. So I'm not sure if we've resolved that part of it yet. It's a great question.
Yeah. From technical point of view, at least we add some warning message to the log. So if the developer will check the logs, he can see old format is deprecated. And also we plan to provide appropriate note in our migration guide for release. So,
did we also add comments in the code around the old functions?
Yes, and that was what I was just showing just a moment ago.
Okay. And I believe in the process of escalated inconvenience, meaning at first it's nice to have comments in the code and entries in the log. And then if we can, over time, gradually make it more obvious that those functions shouldn't be used until we finally can actually remove them. The release notes is good. Comments are good. I'm not sure we have any more direct way to let everyone know who's using the code. Sometimes it's better to just remove it, break things, and deal with the consequences. But in our case, if we've already got people using it or people, relying on it, then we obviously can't do that.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Stephen. I appreciate you joining the conversation and asking a question. We don't have a clear timeline for when we will remove this, and this is really our first exercise of that deprecation process. So we have the log message, the release notes, the comments in the code, and so we do want feedback from anybody who watched this video later on how they think we should do this best. But this is the first time we're doing it. We want to make sure we're proving that we're backwards compatible with something that's fairly safe and clean, and so that's that. So we do want to improve this as we get feedback from people.
Great, thank you.
Excellent,
and I see some green tests.
Yep. So the test with the old format passed. So the old format was inputting it this way. I'll just quickly run a quick test with supporting the new format, and it shouldn't build this time unless.
And is it easy for you to show the log message about deprecation?
No, I apologize. I have to hook up logging into the tests, and there is no logging hooked up in the test.
That makes sense.
It will require rebuild. So
True, and it will require rebuild.
We'll take you at your word. There's a message there. That sounds good.
So yeah, we can see now that the test with the new format passed as well. And of course, that also works with, a larger array as well. When you look in this test here, we're passing in a much larger set of attributes, and that works as well.
Excellent. Thank you for showing that, Matt, and thanks for the conversation. And thanks for participating, Stephen. Matt, if you'll let Slava steal your screen.
Okay, it should be unshared now.
Yeah, hello. I will just share my screen. Maybe just browser. Could you see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, I want to provide some background information how we handled big and problematic pull request from community that we received some times ago. This pull request was related initially for providing of examples of Postgres-based wallet storage plugin, and also there was in mem plugin in this pull request. We got this. It was initially something like 21,000 of new code lines, and there was something like new 83 files. So to start accepting this, we created issue in our Jira. So it's, I believe, number here is 10C63. Yeah, and it was about accepting the pull request related to this. We started initial review of this. Also, there was provided a hype, and we found a lot of significant issues in this initial pull request. Issues very related. There was a lot of copy paste between. The most of the code here was just copy paste from internal classes and files from original libindy. And community member introducing new shared library, and this shared library exposed a lot of internal interfaces to make public and wants to be stable, and it was a wrong decision. Also, there was problem how this plugin should be loaded, and he introduced new infrastructure for loading plugins, new command to Indy CLI, but we already have this infrastructure documented and implemented. So we provided a set of initial comments for his, and also there was a lot of minor problems. And to accept this, we decided to just provide the very high list of problems that must be solved that breaks our architecture. And there was 5 points, I believe. And we agreed as soon as 5 points will be fixed, we will accept this PR. And this guy fixed this, and it was I got with him communication with Rocket Chat and face-to-face, and we decided to accept this, and PR was accepted, but it still will not in a really good shape and require some minor tweaks. After this, we provided accepted PR and provided some guideline what should be done next, and new issues were created in our Jira about the issues with current PR, but it was accepted and already merged to libindy. And issues here, I believe, and we started discussion in new issues what should be done on the next steps. And say the work, he created new pull request with some fixes initially, and I provided some additional guidelines how it can be improved. We decided to create new pull request in work in progress status and continue discussion on GitHub to make this discussion visible and for all team members and also for Google if you really need this. And there is also significant improvements, and I believe very soon he will provide us a new update, and we will just accept this update. So I just show how we can accept big pull requests. So maybe it is better to accept this early and put to some experimental folder and start future enhancement of this code base and provide guidelines for community member. And it looks like efficient process, and I believe it's a good idea. Providing hype, I'm not. It was informative, and we got a lot of communication on this hype. But I believe it's a bit out of hype process because I was only commenter, and it's really hard to get acceptance on such technical and low-level details. So it's not very efficient to make hypes for such changes.
Excellent. And this was the first really large contribution that was provided by a different team than the original authors, than the Evernym team. And so we were really glad to work on it with our friends at British Columbia. And Ian was a really good guy he was really patient as we went through the acceptance process. We recognized that we need to do better at communicating our architectural vision, and we need to do better at communicating the ideal contribution process. And as Slava said, that would start with a JIRA issue and a plan of attack kind of architecture document. We probably want to keep that in the code repository in the design folder instead of as a hype, because it's fairly technical. And then we can engage on that together as a group and bring it into a pull request. So
I can just show, because we already have some examples of such designs, and I suggest to accept designs as pull request to design folder. And for significant plan of attacks, it's better to, if it's short, it can be provided as part of JIRA issue, but if it affects some developer experience significantly, it's better to create dedicated pull request to design folder and try to accept this before starting real work.
Yeah, excellent. And then as Slava mentioned, the other way we want to make this smoother is to accept things quicker into an experimental state and then work on evolving them together with the contributors. So it was really great to go through that exercise with Ian, and we're glad he's still involved with us. And it's useful functionality. I know other people have requested the in-memory storage and the Postgres storage. Well, thank you, Slava, for taking us through that contribution.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Artem we're going to talk about Indy Node and the new request handlers.
Yep, sure.
These are the plugin handlers for the people can use to put in Ledger plugins that the Sovereign Foundation, the Sovereign Network uses for their payments process. Is that correct?
Yeah, that structure includes plugin request handlers, but all in all, this refactoring will help us as in our internal Plenum and Node code structure, and so on in plugin structure. So it would be more easy to implement it and handle. So there is some unexpected exceptions come out. Well, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Well, let's start with a little presentation. So here you can see our old handler structure. There was a few handlers that were implementing Ledger rec handler functionality, which includes functionality for request processing, that is static validation, dynamic validation, and apply. Also, every of these request handlers includes commits on batch created and on batch rejected methods, which stands for batch managing. And also these handlers include get query response. So here is the main problem, that all of this functionality were not structured separately. It was included all in one place. So that means for the main Ledger transactions, logic for all transactions was included in one file, in one class. That led us to several bad structuring features. For example, like switch and anti-pattern. So there was any method. It could be static validation or dynamic validation or get takes and pass, where we just use switch to call concrete, to call a special method for a special transactions, get type of this transaction and call it. That's like the bad one. we should not do that, but that code was evaluated from the beginning. So that is time where we need to refactor it. There is also some other issues, like, as I mentioned, we mixed query and request logic. So one request handler had several write types, query types, and it included all logic as for write and as for queries. That is bad too, because we could not scale easy enough. We needed always to rewrite some methods to rewrite the main request handler, which led us to some problems, including problem with config ledger transactions that was on live for test pool and not so far ago. And another problem which we also mentioned and decided to fix is mixing request and batch logic. So there was the same functionality handles as requests and batch in one class. So we decided to separate it. Here, I will open it. You can see the structure became a bit complex, but all in all, this structure will help us to make path of transactions more clearly. So we've created managers which will handle 3 different actions that you could implement on Ledger. It's write request manager, which will handle write transactions. It's read request manager and action request manager. Read will stand for queries and action will stand for actions that you can perform on Ledger. This separation helped us to separate write and read logic. Also, to separate batch and request handling, we've created write request handler and batch request handler. And each of these can handle every piece of request handling, like in its own class, and that can lead us to classes to become smaller and more understandable. So you could now, for example, now we do not have the one like domain request handler which will handle every transaction in Switch. Now we have a handler, class handler for every transaction. So, for example, if some plugin wants to implement new functionality, it do not need to rewrite or add some if case in like giant methods. It just needs to write its own class and register it with special method in write request handler, which will be managed by write request manager. We have already written some tests, and as you can see, they are passing. And to show what we've changed in code here, here we can see, for example, do static validation code. Sorry. Yeah, so here is we are passing any request, and based on this request, we need to find in static validation handlers, and based on type of transaction, we could call one of these transactions. Instead of this, now we just have separate NIM handler, which you can open at any time and clearly see that if we do static validation, we do just static validation on NIM, dynamic validation, and other things that only refers to NIM transaction. I think that is what I want to tell.
Artem, where can other people get the class diagram you display for the request handler? Where does that live in the Indy Node repository?
For now, I haven't yet uploaded in Indy Node repository, but as we finish the first part of our tickets that are now in our sprint, so I think that would be part of like finishing it. And of course, I will update and upload this diagram to repository.
Does it live in? Is it going to live in the docs folder or the design folder?
Yeah, I think it. Oh, that's a good question. I think I need to clarify it with Alex or Sergey.
Okay. Sounds good. Very excellent. Let's move quickly on to Sergey K. Unless Steven, you got any questions?
No, not about this one. I do have
Excellent.
another question for the end of the presentation, though.
Excellent. We're almost out of time, so we'll go a couple of minutes over if people are okay, and Sergey K. will give us an update on the effort we did to recover from the outage on the sovereign main network.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And hopefully you can see my screen. Well, actually, I'd like to first give some brief description of what actually happened on mainnet, and then describe what fixes we done and what they fix actually. So the problem was I'm giving an example with just 4 nodes, and on mainnet there are much more nodes, but it doesn't change anything really. So let's pretend that node 1 is currently primary and there are only 4 nodes. Then at some point of time, so node 4 lost connection to node 1, and node 4 broadcasted instance change message. So this message was accumulated on 3 nodes. After that, some of nodes, for example, node 3, restarted. And this led to flushing instance change message. So it forgot that it had instance change from node 4. After that, another connection outage happened. So node 1 lost connection to node 2 and node 3. And thus these nodes also broadcasted instance change messages, and we got into a situation when 2 of 4 nodes got instance changes from 3 other nodes, and this is enough to start a view change. So we've got 2 nodes in view change process, and after restoring the connection to old primary node 1, we've got into a situation when some of nodes are trying to view change to view 1, which is in progress, but there are not enough nodes to finish it, and some of nodes try to continue processing messages in old view 0, but there are also not enough nodes. And there is a bug in the protocol. We already done research on how to fix this. We have a short-term and long-term plan. And concerning what happened with mainnet, another problem was that we had another bug that prevented processing client messages, including read request and pull restarts, when there is a view change in progress. So in order to fix the situation, we could potentially send pull restart transaction, but it didn't work because well, it didn't work at first because not enough nodes were in consensus to receive this transaction.
Quick question, Sergey. Is it expected that a restart clears the list of view change requests, or was that a bug as well?
Yes, it's expected for now. Well, we have we discussed option of keeping this request, but there are better options that we found, and we will implement them in future. So we delivered, well, we released 2 hotfixes. One hotfix is already delivered to testnet, to my knowledge, and is waiting for approval for sorry. Well,
waiting for approval from the governance board, technical advisory board. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this hotfix fixes just the problem with the nodes not accepting requests when they're in view change. So after this hotfix is delivered to mainnet, then the problem that led to outage can repeat, but it can be fixed much more easily because pull restart transaction can be sent to pull, and it won't affect read requests. So this won't be as well. The problem will be much much less. And also we are in the process of releasing another hotfix, which is a temporary fix, which discards old instance change messages. So even if some nodes restart and there are some old instance change messages accumulated on some nodes, then they will be dropped, so that the probability of the problem that led to mainnet outage will be much lower. So that's all from me. Any questions?
I think that's a really good explanation. I'm excited to be able to send that to people that kept asking about what happened. So thank you. We're over time, so just the plan for the next couple of sprints. This sprint, we're going to do a 4-week sprint, given the end-of-year holidays for all of the Evernym teams. The U.S. team's taking holiday next week, and the Eastern European, the Russian team's taking holiday in early January. So we're going to do the next sprint demo on January 17th, 4 weeks from today. We're excited that we're getting real feedback on the usage of the sovereign mainnet, and that's given us a lot of interesting priority questions around what should we do next, how do we meet all the different requests we're having. So the backlog's a bit confusing at the moment. Mostly we're going to focus on continuing the stability fixes on the Indy Node side, as well as improving the way we handle plugins, especially for payment plugins. And on the SDK side, we need to, we're getting the VCX, the credentials exchange library, that needs to start supporting the standard agent-to-agent messaging formats that have been recently accepted by the Indy community and through the hype process. So we're going to start that work. I don't know exactly when that'll finish. Oh, and on the node side, there's also some permission changes as part of allowing people to write to the ledger, how we handle that. We used to call them trust anchors. We're talking about the submitter role to make sure that has the right set of permissions. So that's an overview. You'll be able to see the details in the jira.hyperledger.org in our backlogs. So thank you very much.
Thank you.